Kia ora, Mr. Black here, and today I'm going to tell you everything you need to know in order to be able to make your own website or apps. They're actually the same thing. So when you open up an app on your phone, it's just loading some website files, either from on your phone or from the internet. So if you can make a website, you can make an app. The most important thing for you to know when you're starting to make websites is that there are 3 different languages that you need to understand in order to be able to make one. So today we're going to focus on the first of these, HTML, but we'll talk about CSS and JavaScript in a later video. HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. You don't really need to know what that means at the moment, but if you're interested, that's what it stands for. HTML uses something called tags to be able to put the content on your web page. And this is the most important thing you need to know here. The internet would simply not exist without HTML because everything on your page, what we call the content, is placed there by HTML. So as an example, if I go to this website here, you can see that there is some text on this page that is placed there by HTML. The image in the background, that's been put there by HTML. This link here that I can click on if I want, and it's going to take me somewhere else, that's been placed there by HTML. Everything you see here is all HTML. Even things like this map that I can use, that's HTML as well, these links. If I go to another website you might know, like this one here, all of these videos, all of these links, all HTML. So this is where we definitely want to start when we're learning how to make a web page. So HTML uses something it calls tags to be able to put that content on the page. You have an opening tag, whatever the content is, and then a closing tag. Some tags buck this trend by only having an opening tag, but we'll get to that later. You'll notice that an opening tag has these triangular brackets at the beginning and end. Then we've got the content in the middle, and then a closing tag has a slash in triangular brackets. So this is an opening tag, we've got some content, and then a closing tag. That will all make more sense soon. This entire thing we call an element. Okay, let's actually go through the process of starting to make a website. So the first thing I want to do in order to make my website is set myself up with some folders. So I'm going to open up the folders in my computer. You want to think hard about where it is you're going to save your files. You want it to be somewhere that's going to be nice and safe, and preferably that you can access from multiple locations. So for example, you might in this PC have your R drive with your ID number. That might be a great place to save your work so you can get onto it on any school computer. Google Drive might be another good place, but you're going to have to back that up every day by copying and pasting your folder into Google Drive. When I'm making my folder, I'm going to have to give it a name, so I want to think about what is my website going to be about. And for this example, I'm going to do a website on whales. I think whales are cool, it's something that interests me, so that's what I'm going to do. And my website is going to be a competition about whales. So you may have heard of Forest and Bird, and you might have heard of the competition that they do every year called Bird of the Year. You get to vote on New Zealand's top bird for the year, and they have lots of funny descriptions and things for their birds, and I think that's fun. So I'm going to honor that by making a website that's the same but for whales instead. So I'm going to make myself a new folder, and I'm just going to use the downloads folder because I'm doing an example, but you will pick somewhere much safer and better. And I'm going to call mine whale site, and in here is where I'm going to start building my website. So how am I going to do that? What am I going to use? How am I going to build a website from here? Well, I am going to use a program called Visual Studio Code. Visual Studio Code is made by Microsoft, and it's a really good one to use because it's free. Anybody can use it. You could use it on your home laptop if you want to build your own website. It's pretty powerful. It can accept a bunch of different programming languages and that kind of stuff if you're into that kind of thing. So it's a really good one to use because you will know something that is kind of useful in the real world if we use this. So I'm going to open up Visual Studio Code. Now, if you don't have VS Code, as the shorthand is called for it, you can instead, if you're on a Chromebook or something like that and you can't install it, use vscode.dev. So just type in vscode.dev or Google it, and you can see here I've got a browser version. It won't be quite as good, but it'll be pretty similar to what I use. So if you're on a Chromebook, feel free to use that. But I'm going to use the real version. I'm going to use the real deal. And when you open it, it'll probably look something like this. It might have some setup or something like that you have to go through. If you're keen, you can go down your preferences. You can have a fun time changing your color theme and stuff like that if that's the sort of thing that you're into. There's a bunch of fun stuff in here that you you can kind of do to mess around with yours. Maybe I'll figure out something later, but for now I'll just leave it on the default to make it easy for all of you. Right, how do we start? So I'm going to go new file, and I want a new text file. Just a new text file is what I'm going to start off with, and I'm going to get a page that looks like this. So now we finally are going to actually start coding our website. And the first thing that we need is we need to do an opening tab called doctype. Doctype is going to tell the browser that we use. So a browser is something like Edge or Chrome or Safari or Firefox. It's going to tell it what kind of file it's reading when it loads our website. So this is an HTML file. Now we're going to do an opening tag for HTML. So notice that I did the little triangular bracket, and notice that Visual Studio Code is trying to finish off what I'm writing to. If I want to, I can click on this, or I can just hit enter, and it's automatically going to kind of finish off my writing. And notice that when I finished that with that little triangular bracket there, it put in my closing tag automatically for me. That's a really helpful thing that VS Code does to help you not to forget. Now there are two other things in here I'm going to put. I'm going to put head, like that. And I'm also below that going to put body. Now I will explain these in just a second, but for now, notice that these have been pushed in. They've been what we call indented. And indentation is really helpful because it helps you read everything. HTML tags, what they do is they say everything inside here is HTML. It's our website. So everything inside here is an HTML. So we've indented this stuff to say, hey, this is inside the HTML. And notice if I click on these tags, it will also highlight the opening and closing tag for me. The head tags is where we put things about our website. It's not actually stuff that appears on the website, but it's information for the browser about our website. And the body tag is where we actually put things that are a part of our website. So I'm going to save this up so that we can see what's actually happening. I'm going to go File and Save, or you can just hit Control S on your keyboard as well. And I want to save this inside the folder I've already made, my whale site. And for your home page, the main page of your site, we always call that index.html or index.html. So it's an HTML file, .html, and it's called index. And the reason we call it index is partly out of convention. It's what everyone does for the home page, so we can all communicate with each other, but also it helps the browser know which page is your home page, so it knows which page to open first. So I'm going to hit save. So you can see now it's telling me where that's saved. I've also got index.html at the top because that's what I've named it. So if I go now to my whale site folder, you can see I actually have it. Index.html is here. My default browser is Google Chrome, so you can see that there is a Google Chrome icon there. And if I double click this to open it, I can open my website. Now, my website isn't terribly interesting at the moment. It's completely blank. There's no information anywhere, and it's called index.html at the top. So let's start by changing that index.html at the top, and we're going to use our head tag for this. So this is where we put information about our website. So everything up here where all these bookmarks are and above, this isn't actually on our website, it's just information about it. So we're going to have to use our head tag, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to call this title. So title, I've got an opening tag and a closing tag, and I'm going to call this Whale of the Year. Now, if I go back here at the moment and I refresh, nothing's happening, this isn't changing, and that's because I haven't saved this. And I can tell I haven't saved it because of this white dot up here next to where it says HTML or index.html. That's telling me I've made changes and I haven't saved it. So if I hit Control S to save, that white dot goes away, and if I go back here and I hit refresh, now this is updated. It says Whale of the Year. All right, so let's get into some content. We actually want to put some content on our page by using some elements. The first element I'm going to add is a heading. I'm going to go open triangular bracket, H1, okay? H1 is heading 1. These are my tags, so within my tags I need some content. I'm going to put in here a nice title for my webpage. Something like, well, hello there. That's a nice little intro to my website. Again, I need to save it because this dot's here. So Control S. And if I open up my website again or I refresh it, there you go. Now I have a title on here. Now, the thing about this is you've got H1, H2, H3, it goes all the way through to H6. So if I really wanted, I could add a bunch more all the way through to H6. In fact, it may go further, I can't actually remember, subtitles in here. So there you go, there's an element. That one just says subtitle. If I save and I go back and I refresh, you can see now I've got a subtitle. Now if I was to change this to H3, h3. Don't forget to update your closing tag and save. You can see now it's a little bit bigger because that's a bigger heading, h1 being the biggest. So you could add a little subtitle in there if you wanted to. I'm not going to on mine. What I am going to add to mine is a paragraph. So a paragraph is like the normal text on your page. So that's P for paragraph. And I'm just going to add a little bit of text in here. Here is something I prepared earlier. So you can see I've got some text here for my paragraph. It's quite long, it's sort of going off and I can't read it all on my screen. So if I wanted to, I could go like this and I could be like, about there I'm going to hit enter, and about here I'm going to hit enter as well. And I could save this because it's not saved because there's a dot up here. Then I could go back and you can see that it's fine. These enters, pushing this down doesn't actually change anything. So it's useful to push that down just to make it easier to read for me. So there you go, I've added some paragraph text onto my website. Now, if I want to, I can do some kind of styling to that text. I can make it a little bit different by bolding or italicizing or underlining, that kind of thing. So what we can do is if we want to bold, for example, whale of the year, inside my P tags, I'm going to add B tags. So B for bold. I'm going to put that one there and I'm going to wrap it around like that. So now this element, bold, is inside my paragraph element. If I save things up and I go back to my website, I refresh, you can see now that this part is bolded. I can do the same with italics, for example. If I go here, add an I tag, I for italics, and wrap it around that, hit save, go back. Now you can see that this part here is italicized. So we can do a little bit of styling in here with bold and italicizings. Okay, so I've got a nice website here. It's got an H1, a heading on it. It's got a paragraph with some bolding and some italics in it. That's great, it's all looking nice. But now what I want is I want to add an image to it. So I can add an image to my website with the IMG tag. IMG stands for image. Now, just putting in IMG by itself is not going to do anything for us. You'll notice that it doesn't have a closing tag, and that's because this is one of those weird ones that I mentioned before that doesn't always have a closing tag. But what it needs is it needs to know where the image is coming from. So it needs what we call a source. So in here, we're going to put something else in our tag, and we call this an attribute. We're going to put in src equals and then open some quotation marks, and this is where we're going to put the source. So this is a source attribute. Okay, so more information inside my tag. So I need to go now and find the image that I want to use. Now you probably know lots of places where you can get an image. I hope that you're getting ones that you have the rights to use. We don't want to be taking other people's images without their permission. Here is an image that I have found that I have the rights to use under a CC BY license. It's of a humpback whale. It's very cute. It looks like it's waving at us. So I'm going to use this. There are two different ways that I can get the image source. I'm going to show you both of them, but I think the second one is far better. So very quickly, the first way is I could right click here and I could go copy image address. Then what I could do is I could go and paste this in my source, save my site because it's not saved, and then go back here and refresh and I have the image. That's great. That's fantastic. It works very quickly. But if RJ Shade takes this image down, I can't access it anymore, even if I still have the rights to use it. If Openverse goes down, I can't get to this image anymore. If the URL changes, then the image is not going to work anymore. There's heaps of ways it won't work anymore. So what we want to do instead is we actually want to save this image ourselves so that we know it's nice and safe. I'm going to right click it. I'm going to go save image as. In my folder, I'm going to make a new folder, and I'm going to call this new folder images. And if I go into this folder, I'm just going to save my image with a name that's a little better than this. I'm just going to call that humpback, and then hit save in my images folder. Back in VS Code, I'm going to get rid of this old source here, and I'm going to use my own source. I'm going to write in images. I'm going to say, hey, I want you to look in the images folder, please, with a little slash here. And then you can see that VS Code's already guessing what I want. So I can just click on that. I'm going to say, look in the images folder for the image called humpback.jpg. I'm going to save my site. If I go back, my whale should still be here, and he is. So that's fantastic. I've got it, and I also know that everything's nice and safe. Now there's one more thing that I want to add into this tag, one more attribute, and that is the alt tag. So what is the alt tag? What does that do? Well, firstly, if your image doesn't load, it is what will be displayed. So if I write in here, a humpback whale out of the water waving, or something like that, waving its fin, then I save it, and let's say I screw this up, right? Like, so let me take out 2 letters here, so now it's not going to be able to find my image, and I refresh. You can see that the image didn't load, but it did give me that information there that I put in the alt tag. So that's quite useful. The other reason this is useful is because there are some people that, maybe unlike you and me, are not able to access websites fully the way that we do. Maybe they have partial blindness or full blindness, or there's some other reason that they can't look at your image, and they might use a screen reader to read your website. So the reader will literally go through and read your website to them. In that case, the screen reader can't read an actual image, so it will read your alt tag. So if we're being accessible, if we're being inclusive of all people on this planet, then we always want to write an alt tag, and you should always include an alt tag with your images with a description, please. Right, 1 or 2 more things to put into this. The first thing I think is that, if I was to refresh this is quite big. It's taking up a lot of space on my page. And I want to do something about that, so I'm going to put in a width tag. So a width tag lets me resize my image. So if I say, for example, I don't know, 80, that's 80 pixels in case you're wondering, so it defaults to pixels, but I could put px in there if I wanted to. If I save, I go back and I refresh, oh well, that's a little bit small, so I'm going to go back here and put 180. There we go. How's that? That looks a little bit better, but it's still a little bit small, maybe 280. Okay, so that's about where I want it maybe. So I can resize. Now, one of the things you may notice is that automatically resize the height. You can go in here and you can also put in height manually if you would like to, but then it gets quite difficult to get an image that, you know, doesn't look a little bit weird and squashed or stretched. So I usually just put in the width, and you're better off doing width than height. You don't have to use pixels though either, so I had some trouble figuring out exactly what width to use for my image, but if we imagine our screen from left to right, we could say, well, this is about, I don't know, 20%, maybe a little bit less of the way across my screen. So instead, I could do something like putting in 15%. And that's going to mean 15% of my viewport, 15% of however much space my website has across my screen. So I can refresh this, and there we go. The other nice thing about this is if I go like this, you'll notice that if I resize my width of my screen, my whale is getting bigger and smaller. It's always taking up 15% of that space. So that's what we call responsive, and responsive is really lovely. If I left this as pixels, much like I had it before, let's go with 280, it doesn't matter what size my screen is, it's always going to be 280, and that might not be what I want. So using something like 15% or 20%, anything with percentage is quite nice because it's going to mean that your website is responsive instead. Okay, so I've been playing about for a bit and I've added some more content to my website. I now have some more headings, some more paragraphs, and some more images in here. I've got 4 whales in total with a little bit of information about each, and you can see that I've made sure to give all of the referencing for all of my different images. This has had a bit of an effect on my code though. It now looks like this. You can see that I've tried my best to kind of separate it all up with some spaces here. I've got the beginning of each section, but it's still pretty hard to read, even though I've done all the right things and spaced it out and put indentation, all of that. So I need something to help me here, and more importantly, help anyone else that reads my code to understand it. So what I'm going to do is put some comments in. Comments are lines in your code that don't actually do anything on your website. They're just for people like you and me to read. So for example, I might go like this. I'm going to open up a triangular bracket, a tag, exclamation mark, dash, dash. Automatically finishes the rest for me. You can see that that's green in my theme of VS Code. So I'm going to put here, heading of the website, so that I know that that's the beginning and that's the top. Then I might put some more information for myself here. I might say this is my high tiders section, something like that. So I know what that means. I know that's another section of my website, and that's going to tell me what that is. Now, if I wanted to, I could put more information in here. I could put, for example, humpback, narwhal, and so on and so forth for the other ones as well. And what this is going to do is this is going to help anybody reading my website to understand it. Now, when I say anybody, in the real world, usually more than one person will be working on something like this. So it makes sense for you to help those people out so that you can work together productively. But for what you care about, student who cares about grades, is that it will also help your teacher, which means they'll be able to read your website nice and easily, and it means you're more likely to get a better grade because you've got good commenting and because they're in a good mood. So here you go, I've added in some comments. Now it's easier to find things here. I can see where these sections are, I can see where each part for each whale is, and that's just a lot easier to read. So comments, very important and useful. Let's add some more content to this website. I've just added a new section here with a comment, fun facts section, and a heading that says facts to keep you current. So what I'm going to do here is I want to put some bullet points. So there are two ways that you can do bullet points. You can do an ordered list or an unordered list. So an unordered list is probably what you think of with bullet points usually. UL for unordered list, and it's given me a closing tag. And then for each bullet point, you're going to put LI, list item. So you're going to do that for every single one that you want. In my case, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then I'm going to grab all of my facts that I just kind of popped down the bottom here, and I'm going to put that content inside to make a list item element. So you start with what kind of list is it, and then you put your facts in there. There we go, there is my list I need to save. I've got that white bubble there, so I'm going to hit save and go back to my website, and if I refresh here, scroll back down to the bottom, there we go, there are my new facts in an unordered list. If I wanted to do that to be an ordered list instead, 1 to 5 in my case, I would change this to OL for ordered list, and don't forget to update the closing tag. Save that there, refresh my website, you can see that now I have an ordered list. So that can be a useful thing to do. What else can we add to our site? Well, I want to add a button, and I'm going to do that up the top because I want to have some sort of navigation later that sends me to other pages. So that's what navigation is. It's a section where you have links to other pages. So I'm going to make myself a nice little button with the button tag. That button is just going to say click me for now, and I'm going to hit save. And when I go back to my web page now, hit refresh, at the top here, I have a button. It says click me, and I can click it. Nice and fun. Okay, but it doesn't actually do anything right now, so we need to solve that. And we can solve that by adding a hyperlink. So I'm going to come back to the button in a second, but I'm going to show you how a link first works. We're going to use an A tag. That's an anchor tag. So in here, I'm going to put click me to go to bird of the year. And I need, once I save that, to have a little look at what it looks like. Okay, cool, it's sitting there. Oh, it's sitting right next to my button. If I didn't want that, I could do something about that by adding a BR tag. That's a break tag that will just push it down to the next line. So here I've got an anchor tag, an A tag, and it kind of just looks like a paragraph right now. There's nothing happening if I click it. So it needs an attribute. And the attribute that it needs is href. And that stands for hyperlink reference. So href equals in quotation marks, and now I need to give it the website. So if I go to bird of the year and I grab this URL and I put that in my href quotation marks, and then I can save it. Now if I go back to my website, oh, that's gone blue. Okay, so that is a good sign. If I click on it now, it takes me to bird of the year. So I've got a nice little link that I can click. But it doesn't look very nice, and it's just text. We really would like that to be in our button. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab that anchor tag. I'm going to go Control X to cut it, and I'm going to put it in as the content of my button. So now my element is a button that has the anchor element inside of it. I'm going to leave the text as it is. We'll see if it's too long. I'm going to hit save and go back to my website. There we go, click me to go to bird of the year, and I can click it and it will work. It's a little bit long for me. I'm just going to change this to bird of the year. So now that anchor tag inside of my button tag just says bird of the year. There we go, that's a much better little button at the top of my website there. And I can do this as many times as I want, as many buttons as I want. So there you go, I've added a few more buttons there. I'm going to take that break out, I don't need that anymore, and get rid of some of that spacing, and I'm going to save. So now if I go back, I should be able to refresh here, and there we go. I've got 3 buttons at the top of my website now. One to Whale Watch Kaikoura, where you can go see some whales if you're lucky, and one to the Jonah project, or Project Jonah I think it's called, and they help out stranded whales and the like. So that's a cool little navigation bar at the top of my website. By the way, hyperlinks aren't restricted just to buttons and text. You can use images and the like for them as well. So for example, I've got this humpback whale here, this image, and if I was to just open up this for now and I wanted to link to it, if anyone clicks on the image, I want them to come to this page so they can learn about the person that took this image. And what I can do is I can go, okay, so this whole image here, I would like that inside of an anchor tag. So I'm going to go href, I'm going to put the link that I just copied from this website, and then I'm just going to put this closing tag, I'm going to cut that out and go to the end of that line and put it there. So what I've got is I've got an anchor tag, a ref with the link, and then I've got an image inside of that anchor tag. Here's that image inside of my anchor tag. If I save and I go back to my website, I can refresh, doesn't look any different, but now if I hover over this image, notice that my cursor becomes this little hand clicker, and I can click on it and it's going to take me through to there. So anchors can also go on images if we want. Audio and YouTube videos can also spice up your website, so I'm going to show you how to put those in. If I go here, I'm going to add in some of the noises of these whales so that people that come to my website can listen to what they sound like. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm just going to add in an audio control. So I've added this tag here, audio, with the attribute controls, and that just adds the controls to the player that you'll see in a second. And then you add in a tag inside there called source and an attribute called source. So I've got audio tags with a source tag inside, and in here I've added an audio source. So what this is I went ahead and I made myself an audio folder, and then I put in this kind of soundtrack here, and that's what that's looking for in the audio folder for that song that I've just added. So now if I go back to my website, you'll see here that I've got this little audio controller, and this is what I was talking about before with the controls. People are able to pause and able to seek through and have these little options and things. So if I click on this now, you can hear the lovely call starting here of a humpback whale. I think they get a little bit better later on. There you go. So that's an audio controller. Just turn that whale off for now. Another thing that we can do is add YouTube videos, and it's very easy. So I've got this video here of what narwhals sound like. I can go to share, and you may notice on here something that looks quite familiar to you, and that is these little triangular brackets. So we click on that, and it has all of this code here. We can just hit copy, and then we go back to our code and we figure out where we're going to put it. So I'm going to add mine right here. Go Control V, and then it's added in this entire line of code for me, and something called an iframe. It's got a height that you can change. It's got source. This here, it's got a title, not a very good one, so we might want to change that to something like narwhal sounds or something like that. Anyway, we're going to hit save and go back to our website. Now, when I refresh this, you will see down here that hasn't loaded properly, and that's likely because I'm in the school environment where there's a firewall. You might also have an ad blocker, so you can check that by turning those things off, or you can open your website in a different browser. So for example, if I right click here and I go open with, I could open it with Edge. I'm going to have the same problem because I'm still in the school environment, but it might help you if you're coming up against any of those problems at home. But that is a YouTube video there that you would be able to play. So those are some things that you might want to add to your website as well. The final thing that you might be wondering on your website is, how do I link this to other pages? Because it's cool that I can click on these and I can go to these other websites, but what if I want more than one page on my website? So what we can do is we can make a new page. We're going to put a new page in here. So we've already got index.html. I'm going to go to VS Code and we're going to go File, New Text File. So I have a brand new file here, and what I can do is I can go and put in doctype and everything like I've done in the past, put my HTML, my header, all of the stuff that I've done before. You might be thinking, sir, I really don't want to do that. Well, you can get the code online if you like, just the setup code for an HTML page. Googling that, I'm sure, would be a very easy thing for you to do at this stage. Okay, so I've got some information in here now. I've set out my page. I've got my head and my body sections. I think I set up title first before, so sorry about that. Your title should be inside head tags. I've got my body. You can probably figure out what each part of this body does just by reading my comments. So now it's still not saved though. You can see that it's white there and it's called untitled. So I can either go Control S or I can go here to save. And I want to save this in the same place as my index. But what am I going to call this one? This one can be called anything that's relevant to the page. So this is a voting page. So I'm going to call it Whale of the Year voting. It doesn't have to be called anything. The only one that has to be called index.html is your homepage, so the browser knows that's the first one it should go to, but this one you can call anything that's relevant. So I'm going to hit save there. So now I can actually open this page up as well. So if I go to this page, you can see I've got everything that was on there. You can see there's a little voting form there that I'm going to use later. If you're interested in how I did that, you can have a look at this and try to figure it out for yourself. But now what I want to do is I want to link these two pages together. And we do that using the knowledge we already have. We've already built a navigation bar. So in this case, we're just going to add a new button in here. Button like we did before. And then in here, we're going to put an anchor tag with an href or a ref. And that is going to go to the new page. So Whale of the Year voting.html. So now you can see that I've got that in there. I'm just going to close up that tag. And what am I going to put on here? I'm going to put something like vote now or something like that. So now if I save that and I go back to my original page, which I can either open there or I can go back here and I can refresh it, you can see that I've got that. And if I click on it, it takes me to this page. I can't get back though, which is kind of annoying. I can click the back button on my browser, I suppose, but that's not a very nice experience when I want to go to the Vote Now page. So what I also need to do is, now that I've got both of these open in VS Code, is I'm going to add that same navigation bar. I'm just going to copy and paste it to make my life easy. And that same navigation bar right here on this page. And this one needs to be changed, because if I leave this like this, it's not going to go anywhere new, because this is the voting page. We don't want to link to the same page we're already on. I'm going to change this back to my index.html page, and I might just call this something like home, okay, to go back to the home page. So now on my index.html, this will go to the voting page, Whale of the Year-voting.html, and if I'm on my voting page, it's going to go back to my home page. So now go back to here, refresh, there's my nav bar, and go home, vote now, home, swap between them. That's quite a nice experience for my users. And I've linked up both of my pages. That was a lot of learning. You have learned now how to set up a VS Code page and how to put all of this content on there. You've learned how to put headings, how to do a navigation bar up the top here, how to do subheadings, paragraphs, images with links on them. You've learned how to do audio. You've learned how to do videos. You've got different sections in your page with ordered and unordered lists. You've learned how to link up pages. And if you looked at this, you also learned how to do a little drop down. You have learned so much in this video. So we're going to stop it there for now. That's everything you need to know for HTML. In the next videos, we're going to learn how to maybe make this look a little nicer than it is right now using CSS. I'll see you there.